What's up, world? My name is Crystal, and I go by the name Snow. I am a single Christian mother, and God has put it on my spirit to share and navigate my journey with you. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are a returning follower to my channel, what's up? What's up? Hey, hey. And if you are new, just go ahead and take a seat, girl. Get comfortable because today we are talking about fear and what that can look like with single Christian women when it comes to dating. Before I jump in, I do want to say this by no means covers every fear that's possible and every fear that can show up when it comes to dating as a single Christian woman. These specifically are things that were placed on my spirit from things that I've experienced and also have come up with people I've seen around me. Okay? So there are 3 points that I want to tackle. The first point where fear could rise up when it comes to single women dating would be just stepping out into the dating world. Right? Just putting ourselves out there. The second fear that could show up or rise up in our spirits could be, okay, I'm immersed in the dating world, I'm dating or I'm in a relationship, and I just have a lot of concerns and worries about if this is the right person or if this is even going to work, right? The third fear that could rise up in our spirits as single Christian women dating would be something like, oh my goodness, what if I end up single forever? Got it? Good. So let's go into details about these 3 fears. So the first one, which would be just dating, right? Just opening ourselves up, putting ourselves out there, making ourselves available. And that can definitely be really, really, really scary. Okay? So the way I want to address that fear is I want to start off with an example. So a while back, I was talking on the phone or either to myself. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. But I ended up saying, ugh, I'm done with dating. And if you've been following me, you know that I have a child. So my son is 9 and he said, Mama, you can't do that. And I was like, why not? And he said, remember, you have to date for God to bring us our father and your husband, or our daddy and your husband. So the thing about it is, when we date, if we have aspirations, if we have a desire that we have presented to God, that we want a spouse, that we want to get married, we have to be willing to take the risk. So the first one is kind of like a no-brainer, right? And so this one would be more like faith versus fears, right? All of them are surrounding faith, but this one specifically, because the opposite of fear is faith. So if we desire a spouse, if that's something that we've asked for from God and we believe that we were created for marriage, then we have to step out on faith, even with the things that, right, what faith is. We don't know, we can't see, and we have to take the risk. So we have to open ourselves up to dating to even get to that point, right? The second point that could rise up in single women dating around fear would be, okay, I've extended myself. I'm in the dating world. Is this person for me? Is this my husband? Is it going to work? Am I wasting my time? All of these are relevant fears. And trust me, I have been there. Not just once, not just twice, more than that. As a matter of fact, sometimes I still struggle with that fear and I have to wind myself down, like bring myself back down. But we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. So with this fear, there are a set of points that I want to talk about around this. So the first thing that I want to say is if you've extended yourself and you've began dating, the first thing that I would suggest would be a good tactic to do would be to go to God about that person for discernment, right? so that you can see what kind of spirit that person has, what kind of intention that person has, and if they have that intention with you. Now, you may not get that far as if it's with you, and that is something that we'll talk about later, but just really going to God to see what type of heart and spirit this person has. That is something that God is going to reveal to you. He wants his children happy. He wants his children to have lives of abundance. So you can bet on his word that he is not going to keep that information from you. Okay? So definitely go to God with that. I think there was something else I wanted to say about that. Yeah. So that is not a prayer that I've had to take to God a lot, specifically with me, because I have had, as long as I can remember, a very strong sense of discernment. And so, what I mean by that, when I walk into a room, whether it be with a guy, co-workers, in a neighborhood, in church, at an event, whatever, I tend to be able to walk into the room and kind of fill out and pick up the spirits of people, right? So it kind of comes natural to me through the gift of discernment that God has blessed me with to be able to discern and determine if someone is, I would just leave it at against me or for me, right? If this person has a good spirit on them and good intentions, and if this is someone that I can trust to a certain degree, or if this is someone who is not in my favor, right? We're still on the second point around fear, right? We've extended ourselves into dating. The second thing, the second, I guess, sub point that I want to talk about under the second concern around fear would be, let's say we've talked to God and, he's given us a sense of discernment, and we know that this person is a really good person to continue dating or to try to build with. Another fear that arises so much when you're single and you're Christian and you just want to get it right, and you really desire and want to get to that marriage is wondering if this is the person for me. Is this going to be my husband? Am I wasting my time? We're back to that. So the second thing that I would advise would be to pray to God and ask him to order your steps. There are several examples in the Bible where God ordered his servants' steps, right? So this is still a faith walk. This is still a faith journey. And with God ordering our steps, there are some situations, and I'll get to those examples, as to where God has given us the first step. And he wants us to have enough trust in him to make that first move before he reveals the second step. And, I don't know what y'all have heard. I don't know what you've been exposed to. But, as far as running into people who have told me that, oh, God told me this was the one. I've never personally experienced that. I've never met anyone who has experienced that. Not saying that it's not true. Not saying that it can't happen. But my parents, for example, they have been married for going on 47 years. So speaking with them and so many other couples in my life, there seemed to be a process, right? A process that came with it, an ordering of steps where God moved them in a certain direction and gave them specific instructions on what to do, or what not to do, or where to go, or how to think, how to perceive things. And each step led to another, and over time it was revealed to them that this person would be their spouse or this person would not be their spouse. I said that I would provide you examples in the Bible. So the first one that I can use is Job. Job was highly tested. Like, I don't know if I could do it. If I was Job, I might would have failed the test, y'all. Don't be mad at me. But that took a lot of faith. Job lost everything. Job did have a period where, he became weary. He felt saddened. There were points where he even questioned God. But what he never stopped doing was moving in his faith. So during that test, God gave him steps, which was really to trust in him and to be loyal. And so when the testing was over, and when he had moved in those steps that God had given him, then the next steps were revealed. And so Job received everything in return, more than what he lost. But is that something that Job knew would happen prior to stepping out on faith? No. Job didn't know that. God didn't tell him that. If God told him that, it probably would have been easier for him, right? I mean, not saying he wouldn't have experienced some of the emotion that he did, but it probably would not have taken the toll on him that it did. And, even think about his wife. She even lost faith. And if this knowledge was known beforehand, then there would have been more tangible information to hold on to. But there wasn't. God required Job to move in the way he ordered him to. And then as he moved, he revealed the next steps. Okay. The second example and last example that I'll give you is with Abraham. Abraham's first son, Isaac, was by his servant. At some point in Abraham's life, God commanded that he sacrifice Abraham. Wow. Sacrifice my child? Y'all, I don't know if I would have passed that test either. But anyways, the commandment was to sacrifice Isaac. Okay, I think I just said Abraham. If I said Abraham, it was a mistake. God commanded Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. So, I mean, those were steps. We're back to ordering our steps, right? So God gave Abraham a path to follow. Abraham prepared for the sacrifice. He followed the instruction that God had given him. And then God said, nope, don't do it. No, you don't need to do that. I changed my mind. You good, right? And afterwards, the life of Isaac was preserved. He was able to keep his child. And eventually he was blessed with another child. That was a test, right? But in that test was the ordering of God's steps, right? So in that situation with Abraham, God ordered his steps little by little, because not only did he want to know that Abraham trusted him. I mean, God is all-knowing. He's all-being. He's all-doing. So I'm pretty sure that God knew that from the beginning. But God also wanted to build trust in Abraham so that Abraham could know that he trusted God, right? That he had the faith that he needed. And so after he followed those steps that were given, then God revealed the next steps, right? Which would be no, Isaac doesn't need to be sacrificed, and then later blessing him with another son. Okay, so that is the second sub point under the second point around fear in single Christian women dating. Now, this last one is a big debate. I've heard a lot of conversation around this. This is my disclaimer. The information that I'm sharing with you, this will be based specifically on my interpretation of the word, and also my experiences. I do encourage you to take everything back to God, because everybody's situation is different. God has different plans for everybody's situation. And at the same time, people interpret things differently. So definitely, take this along with everything else provided in this video back to God in prayer. But the third sub point would be, I kind of touched on it in the second one, but the big question, is this my husband? Is this the one? Are we going to get married? Right? This is what I have to say around fear that can come from that thought. Okay, let me get it together. I mentioned a minute ago that everyone's situation is different. So I definitely think it depends on your specific situation and what God has already revealed to you about that person. So in a few videos back, I talked about my story. And I talked about my journey and have been blessed to walk this journey for 9 months now with the guy that we'll call Adam. Well, a little while after I met Adam, God, he filled my spirit with oh my goodness, a couple of things. Understand it, but how can I make it short? God spoke to my spirit about Adam. He assured me that Adam was the path that I needed to go. And I never told Adam this up front. It took me a while to tell Adam. And I don't think I've really ever shared this before. But that is around the point where I started saying, "You're going to be my future husband. You're going to be my future husband," which I probably shouldn't have said, but whatever. And I mean, at first, when I would say that, Adam would just kind of look at me. Right? But as time passed, Adam did mention that he felt spiritually connected to me as well. And Adam began to identify himself as my future husband. Okay? So, in that specific situation, with God putting so much in my spirit pertaining to Adam, I don't really, I have asked the question, is this my husband? But I believe that God has given me enough information to know that Adam could be my husband. Now, will it work, right? We have free will. And there's so many, I mean, oh my goodness, it's politics almost when we talk about free will versus God's sovereign will, right? And what they can look like. But this is my interpretation. We have free will, and we can make decisions that are not necessarily aligned with the ultimate thing that God has for us. So, in that way, there are several times, like I mentioned, that I told Adam that I was going to walk away. And Adam didn't really let me do it, or didn't encourage me to do it, and didn't want me to do it. But I'm saying all that to say, in my situation specifically, God has filled my spirit with enough for me to believe that that is my husband. In other situations outside of mine, I've heard several times, it's kind of like a debate. Should I pray for this person? Should I ask, is he my husband? Or should I pray for him to be my husband because everything's going good and everything's under God? Or should I just pray for my husband or a husband and not specifically for him? Like I said, I do believe it's situational. In addition to that, I believe if God has not placed indications in your spirit and signs that are in accordance with his word, that this person is the one for you, then I do think that it's wise for prayer to stay a little less vague and for prayer to be around a successful relationship with your husband and revealing to you who your husband is, rather than praying that things work with this guy because he is my husband. I hope that makes sense. So, moving on to the third point that could arise around fear within single women that are dating. So, like I said, when I kind of briefly went through the points, the third fear could look something like, I'm going to be single forever. That is absolutely a valid fear. And that's something that I've struggled with more so in the past than recently. But it can look like that. And the way I would say to address this fear would be going directly to his word. This is still faith-based. I feel that the solution to eliminate this fear is a little bit more solid, because what I would advise in this situation is to focus and read his word. In God's word, he tells us specifically that for those who delight in him, he will provide all of the desires of their heart for those who delight in him. So if you are a Christian woman, you are a woman that is delighting in God. You are a woman that is dedicated to living your life as Jesus did, to bearing his fruits, to gifting him with your service, to worshiping him, to praising him, to allowing his glory to shine through you. You are delighting in him. And if you've made a decision to be his child and you've made a decision to delight in him, then God has already told you that he is going to provide you all the desires of your heart. So you may not know when and you may not know how, but if you desire marriage, then that is something that God is going to give you. He's going to bless you with through his grace, because that is something that you desire, and you have his heart. Okay. I'm just about going to wrap up this video. There was something else that I wanted to tell you at the end. I think I wanted to tell you. Let me see. I guess I'll leave you with this. Don't be discouraged. I know that fear sometimes can be a cycle, right? Also, not getting like too psychological on any of you. I definitely base everything in the Word of God. But if we want to talk about the mind, God talks about renewing our mind. And renewing our mind is just not renewing our mind in one aspect, from a non-believer to a believer. It's renewing our mind in a lot of aspects. And a couple of struggles that we can face when our minds have not been renewed, and when we have not fully gained the substance of his word in our hearts, could be struggling with anxiety, struggling with depression, even stress, causing stress in situations that stress out the relationship that don't even have to be there. And these are all things that I have struggled with. So if you are experiencing these things, or if you have experienced these things in the past, trust me, you are not alone. But I do want to encourage you to journal. Something that I do and have done in my journal, and I actually got back to journaling, dealing with relationships a while back. But when I have these fears rise up, the tongue tied, I go back to his word, and I find scriptures that speak specifically to those fears or those concerns or those thoughts, and I write them in my journal. So a lot of times, one way that the devil likes to attack us is in our minds, right? He likes to plant certain seeds, or he likes to remind us of the struggles that we've had, the failures we've had, and the things that we've been through, and tell us, oh yeah, it's gonna happen again, right? So I write down these scriptures that speak specifically to my concerns, and when those fears or that anxiety or that doubt or that negative anticipation rises back up in my spirit, I go back to my journal and I meditate. It's been a lot of times that, it's not overnight, for one, okay? It takes practice and it takes repetition, because it's something that you really want to get embedded in your spirit. And there have been times where I can be sitting thinking in that moment of anxiety, and I'm having a ton of thoughts. And when I'm able to calm down, my spirit takes me right back to the things that God has shown me, if he's already shown me something in that area, or my spirit takes me right back to that word to meditate on, so that I can be stable and I'm able to stay steadfast in my faith rather than give in to my fears. This is all that I have for us today. If you are here on my page, moving with me in this journey, I truly appreciate you attending with me and following me today. I pray that there was something that you were able to gain, something that blessed you in the way that God intended for it to bless you. Until next time,